And now, what we are going to do is we're going to cloth cover the blade and the stabbing tip of this weapon, which is pretty easy. I use a fabric from Joann Fabrics called Caviar Wrinkleless. I think it's made by So Classic, but it seems solid and cheap at the same time. If you do shop at Joann specifically, be sure to grab some coupons, or they might have some coupons there. Try and get them online or while you're there, because that's the only real way that you shop at Joann's, is if you have like at least one coupon. Bring it back down to a normal price. I wouldn't suggest shopping at Joann's without coupons, then paying way too much for what you're buying. Whenever you have the fabric, what you want to do is you want to wrap it around to about the flat, to where if you look with some cloth measuring tape, if I do this, it's about 4 inches in. So I will cut a strip of fabric that is 4 inches wide, and however long this is, try to check real quick, 4 inches wide to about 37 inches long. What you're going to use to cut that out, or what I use at least, you can use whatever method you want, is the fabric ruler. Once again, it's this guy. This long one is actually 4 inches long, or 4 inches wide, excuse me. I'll be using this one to cut out the fabric. I also have the mat here that I can cut out fabric with, and it comes in real handy at times. The way that I cut out fabric specifically is with one of these guys. You can also pick them up at any fabric store, and it's a little roller blade that you can use to roll across whatever you're cutting, and therefore you just have your ruler and you put this up against the edge and you just cut across whatever you're cutting. And those seem to work out well, but if you don't have this, you just mark it out with a Sharpie and cut it with a pair of nice scissors. You don't want to be using the same scissors you're using on fabric, foam, and DAP, because it will destroy the sharpness of your scissors and you'll have to resharpen them all the time. So be sure to keep one pair of scissors dedicated specifically for fabric. Since I'll be making a dark gray blade, I will be using a dark gray cloth. As I said before, the Caviar Wrinkleless. Whatever blade you're going to be creating, use a fabric that matches the paint color that you'll be using. It'll blend in the edges really nice and clean, as compared to bleach. So like if you use a red cloth and then painted the sides of it with a gray, unless you're going for like the edges are on fire or something, I don't know. But just be sure to grab some cloth that actually matches the blade that you want to create. And now you'll end up with something that looks a little bit like this. And what we're going to do is we are going to dap the edges of where this is all going to go. You're basically going to dap the cloth cover to this. But the thing is, you're only going to dap where it needs to be, which is about just an inch, half an inch on the edges of this fabric, all the way around, even on these parts here, and all the way down. And you're going to dap all along here, and up on the tip, up in here, and you're also going to dap along this side here. And what we're going to do is we're going to fast forward through that. Okay, as an example, it'll kind of look like this once you've dapped it all. So you're just going to dap around all those edges and you're going to set it to the side for it to dry. Then you're going to dap your sword I actually would suggest that you dap the sword first because the cloth dries faster, but I forgot. It doesn't really matter all that much. It just helps a little bit. Oh, and I'm sorry, we're going to fast forward through this as well. Once you have it all dapped, it's all going to look kind of like this. And you of course have a little bit of dap there, and a little bit of dap there as well. The thing about making plastic dip weapons as opposed to a cloth covered weapon is if you make a cloth covered weapon, you either use a sock, which doesn't look all that good, or you can use fabric and sew yourself a cloth cover for it. But that does require a sewing machine, knowing how to use a sewing machine, or even having a sewing machine available to you at that point in time. As opposed to plastic dip weapons, look a lot better, they hold up a lot longer, and you don't need a sewing machine at all. You just dap on the cloth cover, which is pretty awesome. And now we wait for it to dry once again. Alrighty, now that we got this all dry, we're going to just place it on there. As per the usual, you'll start at one end. Try and make it as center as possible. Place it on like that. I'll show you what it kind of looks like from the start. And we're just going to work our way up the blade. And once again, you want to try and make it as center as you can. You don't want one side to have more fabric than the other side, because it might, the fun foam might cover it up, which we'll get to later on in the video. Now the tip is where it's going to get just a little bit interesting, because you're going to stop at about there, and you're going to press down in the middle of the blade here. So now there's these corners that are poking out. We'll get back to that in just a moment, because we're going to make the corners poke out on this side too. Well, that's not very center. This fabric is pretty forgiving as far as dap goes if you mess up a little bit, so you can peel it off real quick and it doesn't like remove the dap or whatnot. But now, I'm going to try and squish it all together as close as we can. What we're going to do is we're going to leave these corners here, but basically I made them kind of close together. I've made them kind of dap together now. We're going to come back to that in just a second here, but we're going to finish up this side of the blade now. This is what it'll end up kind of looking like. I made it a little short, but that's fine. This little bit of blue foam isn't going to affect anybody on the battlefield. It's not going to injure anybody or anything, so it's no biggie. And we'll come back to the tip and finish that up. So with these two ends, what you're going to do is you're going to dap them down. And the way that we do that is you can either dap them down inwards, or you can dap them down outwards. I prefer personally to dap them inwards, in which case you're going to grab your dap and take the corner here and rub some dap on the inside and on where it's going to lay. So it's going to look a little bit like this, so that whenever you fold it over it stays in place. So I'm going to do that to the rest of them right quick. And now you gotta wait for that all to dry. Okay, now that it's dry, we're gonna fold it over. You try and fold it over as best you can. I'm gonna have to pull down on it and pull it over. And I'll show you how it looks in just a second here. It's going to be a little wrinkly, but cloth covers usually are for plastic tip weapons, at least mine are. As you can see, this is kind of what it turns out to look like. I'll keep compressing it a little bit more, try and get those corners up top down. Work on the other side. And here we go. So it's going to look like that a little bit. Most of it's going to be covered up by the fun foam though. And it's going to look a little bit better once it's all together. And now it's rounded as opposed to being flat as it was before. So now you've done the cloth cover.